you searching for the best in online black radio? Then go to blacktalkradionetwork.com, helping you filter through the noise. Real talk, black talk.
Context of white supremacy, justice, and custody renegade in for another program, hopefully to share constructive information. Today's date is Sunday, October 30th, 2011. I want to hop right to work, see if we can cover as much material as possible today. Our guest, broadcast number 499, he's been with us, I believe this is his 17th visit. Always super constructive, I think, having him on the program. Anybody who needs a word guide or the United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, you can put in this address and you can get the word, you can get the order form, and you can get either book, so you can get them both together. I think you get a discount if you get both books together. The address is tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. Once again, it's tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. I'll give that address out again as we go, and it should be in the description. If you didn't write it down, just check the description and talk to you, and you can copy and paste it and print out that order form if you need either the word guide or the code book. With that said, always extremely grateful to have our guest for today's program. He is incredibly generous with his time, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, are you with us?
I'm here.
Good to hear from you, and just thank you again for sharing a bit of your Sunday evening with us. I hope it's a constructive investment of your time. I wanted to I wanted to begin. You've been doing this work for a long time on your assignment. And one of the things I've noted, in fact, 909, he's a consistent caller to the program. He called in, he said that he heard you doing a program, and the host, you in the book, and you consistently, when you talk, racism, white supremacy, and you're very clear, racism is white supremacy is racism. And he said that the person who was doing the interview was saying racism. Can you teach us, Mr. Fuller, some more about racism and white supremacy? And 909, he said that you stopped and made a point to clarify, to say that, these are not two different things. Racism is white supremacy, and you gave the explanation. And he said that the host continued to say racism and white supremacy. And I'm not, picking on anyone. I'm just saying that I've observed that, where it seems that people, victims, are not understanding the concepts. People that have read your work, Dr. Welsing's work, other people who write about racism, I've just seen where victims have read the material, where they've heard you all speak, but it seems like there is a breakdown in comprehension and understanding. And I just wanted to get your view. Are you observing that as well, where people, especially with your material, where they are reading the book, but they're not, at least from how they're verbalizing what they've read or what they've heard you say, it seems that they are not clearly understanding your position from what you've written?
Yes, and that has always been, and that is always to be expected for the foreseeable future, until, people just simply understand that, well, he keeps repeating that racism is white supremacy, and it seems like that's, I hear that, but, it doesn't add up to me, so I will keep doing what I'm doing. I think the average person will do that for a while until they stop and think about, well, is racism white supremacy, and is white supremacy racism, and are they both the same? And is there another form of racism? That would be the logical question that a person somewhere down the line would probably ask him or herself. And according to what I have written, I've said, no, there is no other form of racism, not while there is a system of white supremacy in place. The system of white supremacy is the only racism, since no one else can be a racist while the system of white supremacy is in place. It's like two things of the same proportion or the same quantity or quality cannot occupy the same space at the same time. That's the way I look at it. Now, whether or not that's true, that's for people to determine themselves. I said, if you're a non-white person, you are a victim of racism. So therefore, you can't be a prisoner, because that's what you would be. And you can't be a prison master at the same time. See, if you're a racist, that means you're a boss over someone based on color. That means you're dominant over someone based on color. And you're the supreme dominance. No other dominant means just that. Supreme means just that. There's nobody that can come behind you and say, I'm going to overrule what you're doing. No, you're it. Now, non-white people on this planet under the system of white supremacy are under the system of white supremacy. Therefore, a non-white person can aspire to be a racist. I'm sure that there are a lot of people classified as black and or non-white who would like to be racist. Maybe they're bought into it. It's a lot of people on this planet, a lot of people in the universe. So somewhere out there might be a great number of people who would say to themselves and to others, I would like to be a black supremacist. I would like to be a brown supremacist. I would like to lord it over someone based on color. I would like to be dominant over someone, large groups of people, or all of the people in that category, rather, whatever category I want to pick that I would be dominant over based on color, and be a supreme racist and tell all these people what to do and what not to do. And if they don't do it, I will punish them, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. It's nothing, no person who is smart enough to know what to do about it. There might be some black people out there, some non-white people on the planet, and I'm relatively certain that there are, maybe in small or large numbers, who would aspire to do that. But the fact of the matter is, it's not that way now. You can't have two bosses in the same house when you start talking about race. If you have white supremacy, it means you cannot have any other type of supremacy, period. That is impossible. That cannot be done. You can have it if there is no white supremacy. If everybody's on what they call, quote, unquote, a level playing field, then other people can aspire to be supreme based on color and mistreat people based on color, which is what it's all about. That would be the aspiration. You're getting ready to mistreat someone based on color. Because when you do the world's business based on what color somebody is, that within itself is mistreatment. That's just like looking at somebody's ears, or looking at somebody's eyebrows, or looking at somebody's forehead, and saying that, well, somebody's forehead, your hairline doesn't come down low enough, or it's not high enough. You're not a highbrow. So therefore, you are supposed to be mistreated because you are not a highbrow. You're a lowbrow. Your hairline comes too low on your forehead. So I'm going to categorize you as a lowbrow, and therefore you are eligible for mistreatment. End of story. And anybody who doesn't like it, I kill them, I stomp on them, I deny them certain privileges and whatnot. I do anything I want to. Why? Because I'm supreme. I'm supreme. So as it stands now, as we speak, this planet, when it comes to the word racism, is dominated by white people, not all white people, but those white people who have chosen to be white supremacists. They are racist. They are mistreaters of people based on color. They classify themselves as white, and they say other people are non-white and therefore eligible for mistreatment. based on just that alone, not on the basis of how tall they are, how short, how much they weigh, where they happen to reside. Just look at them, and if you see that you can classify them as non-white with any degree of credibility, because you do the classifying if you are a white supremacist, then if you decide, well, that person looks like they might be eligible to be called non-white, which means they're eligible to be mistreated. Mistreated by whom? By me, or by anybody who's classified as white. And end of story. And if nobody likes it, whip me. Beat me. If you are smart enough or big enough or bad enough to think that you can. And so far, none of the non-white people on this planet have proven that they are that smart. End of story.
Do you have some codified suggestions with regards to how to correct that comprehension gap? Because I see it especially with reading, where people who read the material and it just seems like they are not grasping everything that they read in the book. Do you have some codified suggestions on how to compensate for that comprehension gap?
Keep saying it. When somebody starts saying, well, white supremacy and racism, like you just outlined, you say, well, you said white supremacy, so where does this and racism come from? Just put it in the form of a question. Usually when people are discussing something, they usually have it in mind what it is they are discussing. So you don't make statements to the person. You don't tell them they don't know what they're talking about, or shut up and don't say it that way or something like that. You simply ask. If I say racism is white supremacy and the other person says, well, there is white supremacy and then there's other forms of racism, and then you say, okay, like what? Like what? When? Where? By whom? Who are these other people who are supreme based on color? Who are they? Point out some of them. I'm asking a question. I'm making requests. That's how we get understanding on anything. Everything in the universe, all progress, and all problem solving starts with a question. And all problems are not solved until all questions are answered, if you're trying to solve problems. And racism is the biggest problem among the people of this planet, according to logic and evidence, at least the way I've seen it, among the people of the planet Earth. Why? Because you can't solve any other major problem without solving the problem of racism. Anyone who has tried to solve a problem in economics, in education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and/or war has not been able to solve that problem so far because they run into the problem of color. Not going to be any solution to a Middle East problem until the problem of color is addressed honestly and forthrightly. In fact, the so-called term Middle East was manufactured to keep confusion going. Confusion about what? Color. If there were no non-white people in what we call the Middle East at all, no people that you could look at visually and classify as non-white, if there were none there at all, it wouldn't be any shooting going on, period. And there was a little bit of skirmishes going on about what you call religion in a place called Bosnia just a few years ago. That skirmish immediately came to a halt as soon as it became relatively prominent in the news. As soon as it looks like it was just kind of go on and on like this Middle Eastern thing. The white supremacists, apparently, whomever they are, and I don't know who they are, they know who they are, must have taken a look at it and say, wait a minute. Even though this is supposed to be about religion, these are white people who are slaughtering each other. And hey, at this stage in history, none of that. We're not going to put up with that for 5 minutes. And they put that down swiftly, in no uncertain terms. They stopped the killing. But in what we call the so-called Middle East, the killing just goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, decade after decade. And you know why? Based on counter-racist logic, it's intended to go on and on and on and on. Now, if you want to put it to a test, just move all of the people out of that area who can be classified as non-white. And this is just my concept, just my theory. This is me talking. But this is something I believe based on the patterns that the white supremacists have operated on ever since the beginning of white supremacy. Just go to the so-called Middle East, and everything that's classified as Middle East, and these classifications about what's Middle East keeps changing, if you might notice. Every now and then they'll call it Israel, they'll call it Palestine, they'll call it Syria, they'll call it Egypt. Every now and then they might even throw in Darfur for about 15 minutes, and then they'll erase it and put something else in there. I mean, it's just a musical chairs type thing about what this Middle East is all about. Oh, we got to drop everything. There's another conflict flaring up in the Middle East. And that's for everybody to drop everything and pay attention to the conflict in the Middle East, which is being manufactured by the white supremacists. Just watch the pattern. Don't take Neely Fuller's word for anything. Just watch the pattern. Why is it that this keeps going on and on and on? And when it looks like it's just about halfway being settled, oh no, can't stand for that. This is a focal point for conflict in order to keep everybody's attention on that focal point. See, we might be having some problems over here, over there, over yonder, up here and up there and up on the side of the mountain. And everybody focuses their attention on that. And the white supremacist very cleverly maneuvers us and say, wait a minute, you all are paying attention to the incorrect thing. We have another flare up in the quote, unquote, Middle East. Keep watching that. And they manufacture all of these flare-ups. Oh, the people are being oppressed. People are oppressed all over this planet. Everywhere. But see, that's a focal point. That's a decoy. And the white supremacists do not intend for things to settle down there. And I think all of the people on the inside who have done a little thinking, if they think about it within the context of racism, they'll come to that conclusion. Now, that's just one thing. And then there are lots of other things all over the planet that operate the same way, because the white supremacists operate in all 9 areas of activity all over the planet, everywhere, all the time. They dominate all of the affairs on the planet among all of the non-white people that's worth paying attention to. They are always, if there's anything where people are being harmed and they're classified as non-white, the white supremacists, and this is where the focal point is, the white supremacists are always, 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 without exception, the usual suspects. That way people don't get confused and start chasing shadows. Say, well, this person is doing that, and this person is doing that, and there are some weapons of mass destruction, and, that's all to confuse people, every bit of it. And the white supremacists are behind all of it. For what reason? To maintain white supremacy. You cannot maintain white supremacy with all these non-white people on this planet unless you keep them confused. That's an absolute. You can't dominate people for long periods of time, consistently, without keeping them confused. People who are confused can be dominated indefinitely as long as they are confused. Once even ignorant people are not confused, they are not, at least not ignorant about they are being confused or that there's a confusion maker, then that's the first step toward those people coming out of their confusion, once you know that you are confused. But the trick is to confuse people so efficiently that they don't even know that they are being confused. That's why you can tell people there is such a thing as maybe there is such a thing as white supremacy. And, of course, there is racism. And racism is out there. Sometimes you hear black people, when they're talking about racism, they say, oh, yes, racism is still around. These are the type. Listen to the words very carefully. Racism is still around. Racism is still around. And then sometimes they'll say, racism is it's out there. You know, it's out there. I mean, yeah, something needs to be done about racism because it's still out there. Out where? See, these are the questions should be asked right there on the spot. What do you mean out there? Out there where? On the other side of Krypton? What are you talking about? Racism is around. Around what? Around what? What are you talking about? I want to know what you're talking about. I'm trying to locate this racism specifically with clarity that you say is somewhere around or somewhere out there. Like there's a song, somewhere out there. Out where? And if it's out there, a question is raised, is it in here? And where is here? So see, these are the kind of cliches that the racists think of and put them in the mouths of people to keep repeating. Oh, there's somebody who is destroying their own people. There are only one own people on this planet. People do have an owner on this planet. The non-white people are owned illegitimately, of course, unjustly, of course, by their victims. I mean, the white supremacists own their victims, rather. And their victims are the non-white people of the planet. These are the only owners, illegitimate owners, but they're the owners. So black people don't own any people. There are no black people, there are no non-white people that own anything. They don't even own themselves as individuals, because you can't own yourself and be subject to white supremacy. If you're a prisoner of war, you don't own yourself. You are owned. The slave vernacular says you have a slave master, a slave who owns people. Illegitimate ownership, unjust ownership, but that's what the slave master says. I own these people. So if I'm a slave master and I own people, I own all of the Negroes on the plantation, what do those Negroes, those slaves, own? They don't own anything. They say, well, this slave, his name is Amos, and he has Clara there, and Clara is his wife. Slave doesn't have a wife, nor does a victim of white supremacy. He doesn't have anything except the ability to beg or to fight and die, I would say at this point in history. To make the slave master so angry that the slave master decides, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill Amos. Might even kill Clara. So what? I can replace him. Why? Because I'm a master. You're correct when you say we need focus and clarity And I was thinking about that even before you mentioned, coming on the program tonight, that we're more and more losing focus and clarity, but it's not the fault of the victims. It's because the white supremacists are masters at escalating confusion. They are the masters of confusion. Nobody can make confusion like they can. They're magicians at it.
Absolutely. Context of white supremacy, and a lot of it with words. Um, I wanted to ask. I know we were speaking before, and you were talking about this escalation in confusion. You were saying that a part of one of your 6 strategies, racial showcasing, putting a lot of non-white people out in front, making it look like they're in charge. 2012 presidential election, it could be 2 non-white people, President Obama and Mr. Herman Cain. You were saying that a lot of the showcasing, racial showcasing, and using a lot of different words to cause confusion. You were saying that racist man and racist woman, they were acting out of desperation. And that really caught my ear because I've heard you speak before where you said that once you get in a supreme position, you're not fearful, you are not afraid of, somebody doing something to you, you're supreme, you're dominant. And I was just wondering, do you think racist man and racist woman that they are currently operating out of desperation?
Well, not exactly at this point. They do from moment to moment sometimes, depending on the circumstances. But by them being masters so long, they know their victims pretty well. So they know how to move them around like little objects on a checkerboard. They just move people around. You can easily do that once you're a real master and you really study your victims. And you have to study your victims all the time in order to control them. It's just like if you're a farmer and you have sheep, you have to know the habits of your sheep. In fact, you have to train them to do the things that you want done. Otherwise, you have to get up in the middle of the night and go and see about them. The white supremacists don't have to check on their black people. They know what we are going to do. They know when they pay us off on a Friday afternoon or whenever it is and whatnot, they know where we're going. They know what we're going to do. They know when we're going to get mad and kill each other and all like that. They set it all up. They set it up for all of this to happen. They know what will make us grin, what will make us laugh, what will make us act silly. And they set all that up too. And they know when to tell us to be serious. And the only time they want us to be serious is when they really have to have us be serious about something that's going to help them to consolidate their power. The rest of the time, we can be just as silly as we want to when we're among ourselves. And if we act like we are not going to be silly among ourselves, they'll come around and start something that's really silly. And it doesn't take much to do that. They'll come around and take a look, and, in 15 minutes, they got everybody doing something that's absolutely silly because it doesn't take much. When you have complete control over people, even before they are born, it's very easy to lead them. Anybody who has ever herded animals knows this. You can train a cat to lie down with a dog if you catch that cat early enough. Otherwise, the cat won't do it. There are instinctive things within the cat. The cat will know that dog is not, that's not his father. The cat will know that if you don't catch that cat early enough. But you catch it early enough, that cat will go around looking for the dog, saying, that's my father. I've never known any other father. These are just things you can observe yourself. Everything in the universe, if you tap into it, I mean, regardless of what the crowd is saying around you, because the white supremacists will drown you if you're a non-white person with all kinds of what is commonly called misinformation. You will be misinformed. In order to do what? In order to confuse you, because when they can confuse you, they can keep you under submission. They can keep you doing their bidding. They can laugh at you forever, which is what they do. The purpose of the system of white supremacy is just to mistreat people and laugh about it. That's the purpose. At one time, they threw in a lot of things like doing work, but the white supremacists do work. Sometimes people say that the white supremacists, are lazy and they don't do any work, and they just have the non-white people doing the work. No, they do this for convenience. The white supremacists are some of the hardest and certainly the smartest workers on the planet. They don't mind work. They burn midnight oil when other people are asleep. I mean, they're up studying how they're going to dominate because that's what they like to do. And not only just dominate so that we can have what we call a wonderful world where everybody gets along in peace and all like that. No, that's not what white supremacy is about. If it was about that, everybody should embrace it. Who would care? Who would care about what color somebody is or what non-color somebody is who is in charge? Who cares about who's operating the ship? Who cares about who's operating the Titanic if it's not going to hit an iceberg and everybody's going to get where they're going safely and in a pleasant manner? Nobody should care. They should actually say, I'm all for it. They should support it. But that's not what white supremacy is about. White supremacy is about confusing people, then mistreating them, because confusing people is to mistreat them. But then you do all kinds of harm to them and get them to do harm to themselves, and then stand back and laugh about it and feel good about yourself. Now, if anybody wants a picture of what white supremacy is about, that is it. Do harm to people through deception and violence. Get the people to do harm to each other, and then go back behind the bush and just roll in the dirt, laughing about it because you were able to mistreat people on a massive scale, and you find that to be fun and an excellent way to spend your time on this planet that was given by the creator of the planet. And that's an absolute disgrace. That's why anybody within the sound of my voice should stop and think about this system of white supremacy and what it really is, and come to that conclusion, if you do come to that conclusion, and think about what an absolute insane disgrace that is, and that show has been running too long. And as you just said, in repeating some of the things that I have said about racist strategies for confusion, that those six that I sometimes mention, the showcasing and all that, putting black people up front. And they're reaching and grabbing them here and right and left and down the center, just picking them out of the crowd and putting them up front. And the black people who are being put up front, it's no fault of theirs. It's just like bringing a slave from the bottom of the ship up on deck and saying, hey, I got a plan for you. And you will be fed a little better than the rest of them, and you will be clothed a little better than the rest of them, but it's my plan. Now, if you don't want to go along with it, if you don't want some fresh air, and the average person wants fresh air, the average person, you can't blame any person for wanting to hold some kind of office or get a better job. If I have a job and someone comes along, and the foreman or the master of the job, the master of the plantation comes and tells me, well, hey, I can double the food that you and your family get, what you call your family. I can double it. I can quadruple it. You all usually are pretty hungry. You go to bed hungry and whatnot. I can get you off of that dirt floor. And you can turn it down, or you can take it. Now, of course, if you turn it down, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just put you back on that dirt floor, and I'm going to cut the food even that you're getting, and I'm going to choose your brother or someone else in the next shack next to you. So you're going to take it or leave it? You got about 2 seconds to make up your mind. Which is it? Now, the average person will take that. I would take that because it's logical to take it. You're a prisoner of war. You're a prisoner of war. So they can choose you or they choose someone else. So it's really no difference in the big picture of things. And no non-white person should tell another non-white person, you shouldn't run for president on account of you might be helping the white supremacists. You're already helping the white supremacists because you're on their planet. Now, that's one thing we shouldn't get confused about. That needs to stop. That one black person accusing another black person of being a sellout. You can't sell what you don't own. You can't sell what you don't control. How am I going to sell some other black person? How many black people do I own when I am owned myself? Come on, we need to come off of that. I go and get me a good job and then I assume that I own some black people. You don't understand white supremacy when you say that, and you show that you don't understand it. White supremacy is awesome. It's not a small operation. It's big business. That's the definition of big business, white supremacy. The people who are against white supremacy are very small business, usually almost on the verge of going out of business. So we need to look at it that way. So when some black person is being showcased, they're not showcasing themselves, they're being showcased. Let them. So what? But you have to understand that they're being showcased, because the white supremacists are just going to use them to do things they want done. They'll say, now, here's what, I'm putting you in charge. That's what they say. They're not putting you in charge of anything. They're going to make all of the major decisions. They'll let you make minor decisions, little decisions about whether to sharpen one pencil or two, or something, or the equivalent of something of that value. They'll say, oh, no, you got your finger on the nuclear button and all like that. They'll tell you when to push that button. You better not come anywhere close to that button on your own, or you'll find out what you'll find out what white supremacy really is. I'll put it that way. You're going to make a decision to push a button. You can't make a decision to push a button on one person. Not to say anything about millions. If you're black and on this planet, under the system of white supremacy. And any so-called leader, president, emperor, tribal chief who is black anywhere on this planet, he believes that he got some real power, or she, let them try to do something on their own without checking with the master of this planet under the system of white supremacy, or rather within the system of white supremacy. They'll go into shock if they really believe that, because they're going to get a shock. That shock is coming. Now, the white supremacists will stand behind you and say, now, I got a list of people here that I want killed. And I want them killed. You don't know anything about them, because I ain't told you nothing about them except what I want you to know. But I want these people killed by the end of next month. So they'll allow you to do that, because they're going to hold it against you that you did it when it's convenient for them to do so. In fact, they're going to say that's all you're worth. They say you're black, you're non-white, so you know something about killing people. See, they'll put all of their blood on your hands. I want everybody who is listening now to remember that. When it comes to anything destructive, it comes under the category of the slave did it. Now, what do you do? What do you say about these things? Because everything about counter-racist logic is not just about talking about what the problem is, it's about problem solving. So what you say is about just about anything that's happening on the planet where harm comes to significant numbers of non-white people. It's 4 things. Now, these are not in the book. They will be in the revised edition. But these 4 things, you can hold on to them. I think I've repeated them once before. I'll repeat them again and again and again, because you can latch on to these and they will work anywhere. Number 1, many people have been harmed who should not have been harmed. Number 2, many people are to blame. Number 3, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight. And you can add in parentheses, worldwide. Number 4, the people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. And you can put in parentheses, racist men and racist women collectively, and add, they are always, underline always, the usual suspects. That's when any non-white people anywhere, for whatever reason, if they're classified as non-white or if they seem to be non-white or somebody thinks that they're non-white and they have been harmed, many people have been harmed, that's number 1, who should not have been harmed. That's number 1. And number 2, many people are to blame. Any harm that came to any non-white people anywhere on this planet, many people are to blame. Some of them might be non-white. They'll have some blame. We're all to blame. I mean, it depends on what proportion you mean. I'm to blame. Neely Fuller is to blame if somebody got killed unjustly in Darfur. Let me give that as an example. Today, somebody I never saw or heard about. But because, why? By now, I should have made an effort to find out. So a person can say, I am to bear a little bit of the blame. Not much maybe, but some, because I am on this earth for the purpose of seeing to it that people are not harmed who should not be harmed. That's a big part of the reason I am breathing, and every other person who is on this planet. According to whom? According to logic. You're supposed to be trying to help people the whole time you're here, people who need help. I'm supposed to be doing that. So if anybody is harmed unjustly, I am somewhat to blame. Prisoners of war are somewhat to blame, just by being prisoners, just by being slaves on the ship. I mean, you let yourself become a slave. You let yourself get caught. Now, you can stretch it takes a stretch of the imagination, but you can say, well, you shouldn't have got caught. Then you wouldn't be adding to the whole shiploads of people who are being caught and made slaves. If you hadn't been a part of the shipload, you could have made space for somebody else, or at least you wouldn't be making money for the slave master, simply because you did not get caught. But maybe you couldn't help it out of ignorance or whatever. So I say many people are to blame. That's number 2. And number 3, I'm going to repeat it again, the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight, meaning they are people who are so-called in great positions or in positions of so-called innocence. In other words, they're standing right there in front of you. And they're pointing at all those so-called bad people who are down the road or over yonder somewhere or overseas somewhere or up under the ground somewhere or up above the clouds somewhere. They're pointing everywhere except the finger that should be pointed right to them because they're standing right next to you. In many cases, it goes to show you what masters of deceit that they are. They know how to point the finger. Always someone over yonder. Oh, if we could just straighten out that bunch of people down there. Oh, we got to go down there on the other side of the world. I mean, down there up under the world. Or down there, I mean, where everything is frozen and whatnot. Or down there among all those dark people in what we call the jungle, in the Amazon and whatnot. Oh, they're the ones who are causing all of this problem. We wouldn't have any problems. This would be a wonderful world if we could just go down there and straighten out all those people who are causing all these problems. And you're looking right at the person who is what? Engineering the whole thing, standing right there in front of you. That's why number 3 is the people who are most to blame are hiding in plain sight worldwide. And number 4, the people who are most to blame are all white supremacists. Don't forget that. That's the punchline. Every last one of them. They are most to blame for all of this mess, not some of it. Anything that happens, I mean, no matter how mysterious it looks, you just punch the computer and use that expression that was in the movie Casablanca. They're the usual suspects. Some people might remember that scene. I remember it. I've seen it several times over. It's a sort of a quip, you might say. Almost a quasi-serious comedy, the movie Casablanca. But serious in a lot of ways, because there are some basic lessons in it, which is why it's kind of rated, I think, as the second greatest movie ever made, even though it's what most people would call a hokey, boring movie by today's standards. But there's a captain of a police unit, I think, operating under the Nazis. This is about World War II and something like that. Captain Renault, he's a French captain. And he made a statement near the end of the movie. Major Strauser has been shot. Round up the usual suspects. Now, that was a quip that he used all the time. Anytime anything happened, I mean, that he figured, well, hey, why bother to go and look for whoever did it? Because I got an idea. In fact, he was right there when Major Strauser was shot. He saw Major Strauser being shot. He knew who shot Major Strauser. But he said, round up the usual suspects, meaning all the people out there who usually get blamed for everything anyway. And there's a parallel to that, because that's black people all over the world. And something goes awry, something happens that shouldn't happen, and all like that, the white supremacists say, round up the usual suspects. Well, we can say the same thing. Round up the white supremacists. They're the usual suspects when anything happens that has to do with non-white people. And it's not a quip when we say it. It's the truth.
Context of white supremacy. I'll check to see if Justice has some questions. I want to make sure I give out the address. If you need a copy of the word guide or the code book, it's tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. So tiny, TINY.cc/Fuller in all caps. And if you want to dial in, if you have questions, or if you just want to listen on your phone line, the number to dial is 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. That number one more time, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Justice, if you have some questions for Mr. Fuller, your line should be open.
Greetings. Greetings. Okay. My first question is, why do you say you are not a doctor?
Because I've never cured anybody of anything, to my knowledge. See, I can understand why people, do that. People call me doctor sometimes, and one time when I was in what they call the military, there was a fellow, a black male who had come off of a farm, I think, in Louisiana or something, and hadn't had much schooling and whatnot. But he went around the training unit referring to me as Reverend. And I didn't ever say anything about it, but I understood it. I understood why he did that. Because where he came from, anybody who probably could read or write, or you might say hold a conversation with white people where they understood what you were talking about and showed some appreciation for what you were talking about. Probably where he came from and what his experiences had been was that a black person who could do that, colored folks, as we said back in those days, had to be a reverend, had to be a preacher. So black people have a tendency to give, since the white supremacists for many years did not give black people any kind of title except the one that we're familiar with, the title of nigger. You know, that was the title that fit them all, that fit all of non-white people who were particularly very dark-skinned or even light-skinned. I mean, once you get that classification, you're stuck with it. If the white supremacist says that's your classification, regardless of what language you speak and whatnot, that's what you are. That was the title. So black people got in the habit of giving themselves titles, sometimes 5 and 6 titles for one person. You know, the right reverend, most high, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Might even throw in mayor, or certainly chief, and sometimes attorney, doctor, et cetera. So sometimes even today, in introducing some black people are so starved, you know, we have such low self-esteem and whatnot, we need all kinds of things in front of the names that we have been given, and names of distinction. So sometimes if you got 5 or 6 people, and some people have probably witnessed this, being introduced on a stage, and they all black, and whatever the seminar is about was supposed to start at 7 o'clock. About 9 o'clock, they finally get through introducing people, mainly on account of they're standing up there talking, trying to recite everybody's title. And really, looking at it objectively, looking at it, whatever that word means, but looking at it with clarity, looking at it seeking logic, it's not very logical to do that. I have told people it's best not to even recite what a person's name is if it's going to take up prime time for getting a functional message over. But like I said, black people's self-esteem, because that's really what it is so low that we need a lot of titles that we have heard about, king, queen, something, in front of our names. When if you're really doing excellent work, you don't even need a name. Your work will speak for itself. People will find the name for you, like they did with Mohandas K. Gandhi. That was his name. But they called him Mahatma, according to what I've read and saw in a movie, meaning what? Great soul. The people named him that. They gave him that title. He didn't give himself that title because they said, hey, he's different. He gets some, you know, he tries to do things that looks like other people are not trying to do. I mean, he's just out there. And he's not showing off, I mean, because it's dangerous what he's doing. See, it's easy to do things to show off. You get a lot of titles in front of your name if there's no danger involved. But when you're in danger, you don't hardly want anybody to even know your name. Why? Because you draw attention to yourself and you might get killed real quick. So I say in connection with that, people shouldn't seek titles. They really shouldn't. Just look at the work that needs to be done and do the work. Forget about the title. Anybody who can give you a title can take it away from you, particularly a title given to you by the white supremacists. And the white supremacists will hand out titles to non-white people once they see that that's what you need. They'll say, how many titles do you need, you know, in order for you to do my bidding? I'll give you as many titles, you know, pick one. I got about 7,000 here. Pick 1,000 or two, okay? I mean, just load yourself up with titles. as long as you carry out my mission. Because I care nothing about titles. Like a white supremacist once said, I'm a white man, and he did add one other title. He said, I'm a white man, and I'm from Texas. That's an actual event someone told me about. He walked into a black pool hall and said, I'm a white man, and I'm from Texas. End of story. Everybody stop what you're doing. Pay attention. That's what that meant. Or else. It's all the title he needed. He didn't say I'm Henry Smith. He didn't say I'm president. He didn't say I'm a king of the world. He didn't say I'm royalty. He said, I'm a white man and I'm from Texas. End of story. Act accordingly. You know everything you need to know right now if you're black. Have I spoke with clarity?
In what ways should the accomplishment of... Yes, sir. Yes. In what ways should the accomplishment of your ultimate objective involve me, and in what ways should the accomplishment of my ultimate objective involve you in which of the following areas of activity? Economic, education, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
Well, that's a question that's supposed to be asked, I think. That's one that's in the book, correct? In the textbook for victims?
Yes.
Yes, and I think if you read that, if I remember correctly, it's supposed to be addressed to a white person by a non-white person. Is that correct? What does it say? I don't have it right here in front of me right now, but I think that's what it says. In other words, when you're... Oh, you don't have it?
Yes, I do. Yes, I have the book in front of me right now, but
Yes.
I will, I'm gonna try to find it. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Yes, I think that's the way that it is written in there. That's the way I remember it. But it probably can be asked of anyone, but it certainly is a question to ask when a black person, for instance, for example, is talking to a white person, and they're talking about world events or something like that. Depends on the subject matter and whatnot. It has to be something that the white person wants to talk about. Otherwise, you're not going to have a comfortable conversation and a constructive conversation. That's when you're talking to anybody, by that matter. You always talk to people about things that they want to talk about or don't talk at all. I mean, otherwise, you're going to get conflict. You don't want that. You already got enough conflict. So if a white person wants to talk about world affairs or something like that, well, one thing, if you're a non-white person, because you're trying to solve problems, you're not trying to just beat up on white people and whatnot. Just because you're in a huff about it or whatever, regardless of the circumstances. So you ask the question, what is it that you are supposed to be doing? I think that's what you just read there, something like that, something to that effect. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Why are we on this planet? Why are we in contact with each other? I mean, if we are in contact with each other, what are we supposed to be doing? And presumably, we're not supposed to be doing anything to harm each other. So if we are not going to be doing anything to harm each other, what are we going to be doing to help each other in all of the areas of activity? Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If we're going to be in contact with each other, what are we supposed to be doing in each one of those areas of activity? You can ask anybody that you're in contact with, and they are looking forward to maybe being in contact with you, or because of the circumstances, even if they don't want to be in contact with you, they are in contact with you. You want to at least get an understanding of what you're going to do with that contact. That's with anybody. That's got to be gotten straight. Otherwise, there's going to be and escalation of problems. And particularly if people seek each other out. If I go looking for someone, I should be able to tell them what I'm looking for them for. I say, I've been looking for you, and now I've found you. Okay, you've been looking for me, and now you've found me. Now what? What do we do? How do we interact? What was your purpose for looking for me? In the case right now in the Northwestern Hemisphere and in other parts of the world, I guess the average black person who is looking for a white person, the average black person, most likely along about now is looking for a decent job or a decent house or something that will help that black person to not be in bigger trouble than they're already in. And that's legitimate. Why? And it's logical. Because usually in the system of white supremacy, if you're going to get serious help that is of any real value, it will probably come from somebody white, directly or indirectly. Logic tells you that. So what the relationship is going to be, if you can call it that, between myself and a white person that I'm talking to, I want that to be clear. And I want it to be clear in every area of activity. Is this going to be an educational relationship? In other words, you're going to teach me something that I need to know in order to be able to help myself and help others in a constructive manner? Because that's the only reason for getting an education, helping yourself and or helping others, or both, to get something accomplished that is constructive in a constructive manner. In religion, same thing. If you're going to talk religion to me, why are you talking religion to me? In order to do what? What is it that you intend to achieve? I want to know the answers to these questions. We should have a bunch of questions in each one of those areas of activity, all 9 areas of activity. Economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If there's some kind of sexual content that comes in, you want to know, wait a minute, sex is very serious. So now, are you going to discuss sex with me? In what context? In order to achieve what? And they might say, well, I want you to support this movement we got going. What movement? And for what ultimate purpose? And when it's all over, what is the benefit that's supposed to come out of it that will prove to be of constructive value? See, once you start asking questions and you keep focused, the questions will come to you to ask. Because everything has a reason, and that's what you keep focused. Why are we talking? What is the reason for us talking at all? In order to accomplish what? And what is the likely result to be if I go along with whatever you suggest? What is the likely result to be? And is that result going to be constructive or non-constructive? Because everything, every move that a person makes, even if it's just waving at somebody across the street, that's going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. There's no such thing as something in between. Every move that every person on this planet makes, even as we speak, every word that you use is either going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. And the thing that every person should be trying to achieve is a constructive effect every time. Every time you make any kind of move, every time you reach and to get a piece of food off of a table and put it in your mouth, you're supposed to ask yourself, if I eat this, is it going to have a constructive effect? Now, I know there's somebody sitting in a bar right now, getting ready to take another swig. I'm not saying don't take the swig. I'm just saying ask the question. Is this going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect? Now, for the last half hour, you've been wanting to get off that stool and you haven't been able to. You've forgotten where the exit is. In a little while, you're going to be staggering toward that, what you think the exit is, trying to get to your car. Keys in hand. And you're wobbling while you're walking. Now, that last drink that you took, or maybe the fifth one, or somewhere in between, is it going to have a constructive effect or a constructive effect? I don't know. But if you get under that wheel and go speeding down that highway, somebody will know something. If you can't tell the difference between the headlights and the telephone pole.
I found the I found the thing that you wanted me to find. Did you want me to read it or? Oh, I was saying, 'cause you asked me, could you please find where you found that at, and I found it.
I don't think I comprehended the question.
Okay.
Is there any other way that you could?
Okay. Okay. You said, I believe that those questions was for white people. I believe.
Oh, yes, that's what I said.
Okay.
But they can be asked of anybody. I mean, if you're interacting with people, because when you're interacting with people, people interact with each other all day. And what you want is all of your interactions with everybody, white and non-white, to start on that road to being constructive. People have a tendency just to talk, just to hear themselves talk. That is a very, very, very potentially dangerous thing. By dangerous, I mean non-constructive. And once you start doing one thing that's non-constructive, it'll lead to something else that's non-constructive. Non-constructive talk will lead to non-constructive action. This is why sometimes people start out laughing and smiling and talking and backslapping and whatnot. And because they're kind of aimless in what they're doing and just kind of having a tendency just to say anything, they wind up acting like the Sopranos. If anybody's seen some of that TV series, where all somebody has to do is just say one or two words, and the next thing you know, I mean, it's a melee going on. Now, that is no way to exist on any planet, anywhere, not to say anything about this one. But we all take it for granted that this is something that we take for granted. And there's nothing particularly harmful about it. And it is promoted and supported by the white supremacists because, to use a cliche expression, they love mess. The more mess, the better. The more destructive things are, the better. They like destruction. They like tearing up things. They like people tearing up each other. And they fix them back just well enough to tear them up again. That's the white supremacist philosophy. That's what they call life. They write books about it, make movies about it, sing songs about it, get other people to write books and make movies and sing songs about non-constructive behavior and applaud it and see nothing in error about it. You stand back and look at all of that and take an excellent long look. And you have to say, wow, is this real? Is this necessary? Is that all there is? to use the title of a song by Patti Page, it came out in the 1950s, I think. Is that all there is? Is this what life is supposed to be about? Is this the best that people can do? We're in a universe, and this is the best that we can present ourselves as being in universal people, which we are sorely not qualified for at this point if you measure it by what's constructive and what's not. So all of our conversations, I'll say again, regardless of the nature of the conversation, what you just read there in the book is just one of these suggestions. Keep everything constructive. Everything is in one of two categories, constructive, non-constructive. And don't follow a person as an example, because we all make mistakes. I count mistakes that I make every day. And sometimes somebody else will point out a mistake that I made, which I want them to do. Why? Because we're supposed to be getting away from mistake making. Mistakes are going to lead to other mistakes. They feed on themselves. So nobody should, everybody makes mistakes. The only person that doesn't make a mistake is the person who says that they don't make a mistake, because they have just made the biggest one. And mistakes are supposed to be corrected. You make a mistake, you correct the mistake, and you move on. Babies understand that. When they fall down, they find a way to stand back up. Sometimes when they realize that they have made a mistake in the way that they were trying to walk across the floor. And if they are somewhat vocal and have learned a few words, I've seen babies actually say, uh-oh, and then they will pull themselves up and say, maybe I should hold on to something while I'm trying to walk. I'll hold on to the chair leg or something next time I try to get up. Make sure that it's sturdy. Ants make mistakes, but they try to correct them. So there's nothing embarrassing about making a mistake, any kind of mistake. You just correct the mistake. If it's going to be any embarrassment, it should be not about the mistake. The embarrassment should come about when you're not trying to correct it and just keep making the same one over and over again, thinking that you are keeping from being embarrassed. But actually, you're just making the situation worse. I hope I'm making myself clear, because the whole purpose of this conversation tonight, and I was thinking about this before I even started talking, we need to get to what to do and what to say and be clear about it. In doing what? In solving problems within the context of the biggest problem, the system of white supremacy.
Context of white supremacy. Justice had to step away for a moment. She'll be right back. I wanted to get in one of the questions from a listener. And if you are one of the folks who dialed in, if you have a question, if you're on the TalkShoe line, it's *8. If you're on the free HD line, which is the 760 number, it's *6. But this person, they emailed their question in. They said, you talk about hiding in plain sight and confusion. They said, what should a non-white person think when a white person tells that non-white person that they, the white person, has never really understood racism? And just reading that question, it reminded me of what you have said consistently. If that white person knows that they're white, they know enough about racism, white supremacy. But did you have a thought on that question, sir?
That's it. You can just simply ask questions like, well, do you see any value in being classified as white? And whether you do or don't, why are you classified as white? Who classified you as white? Why have you classified or accepted that classification as being white? And what is that supposed to mean? Is it supposed to mean something or nothing? And if it's supposed to mean nothing, why have the classification? Classifications, I think, are supposed to mean something. But what are they supposed to mean? And you can just ask questions. Stay in the question mode. Because, see, you can't assume that you understand anything about white supremacy that a white person doesn't understand. So they're asking you these questions, apparently, but you should turn around and say, well, you know, I'm searching myself about what it's all about. I'm trying to find out. I am a victim of it, of a thing called white supremacy. I understand that. I understand that people, you know, have for a very long time, I'll put it that way, I don't even know how long, you know, with accuracy, if I'm going to be truthful. There are some people that quote the number of years that white supremacy has existed and all like that. I don't do that. I simply say I don't know. I'm telling the truth. I don't know, but why? Because different people say different things. And there's even arguments even today in 2011 about whether white supremacy even exists. And if it does exist, in what form and when and where and by whom? And when do you know it and when do you not know it? So all of this is still controversial, even in 2011. Super controversial because it's still the biggest, most confused subject that there is. Nothing about medicine is more confusing. I think someone said, Dr. Christopher Edley, I may be making a mistake, I hope I'm not, who is a professor somewhere, made the statement that racism is not rocket science. It's harder than rocket science, or words to that effect. I thought that was pretty accurate. And so when you're talking to white people, if you're a non-white person, always be seeking an explanation rather than trying to make one, other than just using what you choose from the code book or some other book about, like you can take Neely Fuller's position, white supremacy is racism, racism is white supremacy. That's my position. But a white person might say, hey, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I know all about it. And I would think that maybe he does, or she. A white man and a white woman in a system of white supremacy, sure, they know a lot. I would assume that about race and racism. I would assume that they would. And if I'm making an incorrect assumption, they can tell me that. And they can tell me what they don't know about it. And I have to always think about, though, while they're talking, whether or not they're telling me the truth. Now, that's where the problem is. A white person saying they don't know anything about racism and wants me to tell them. I have to think about whether what they have just told me is the truth. I have to think about that. Why? Because if the person is a white supremacist, I can pretty well assume they're likely not to tell me the truth about anything that they think will be of constructive help for the long run. If it's going to have a major effect, particularly a major effect on the existence of white supremacy. Because a white supremacist, chief weapon of a white supremacist is deception. And when you're deceiving somebody, it means you're going away from the truth. You're not trying to reveal the truth if you're being deceptive. But that's the basic characteristic of a white person who is a white supremacist. They will say things that are not true, and they are excellent at doing it. They're the best that there is at saying things in such a way that it sounds like it's true. It's something that you will always, you are practically with tears in your eyes say that's, you have finally discovered the truth. And it'll be something just as big and false as it could possibly be. But they know how to dress up of falsehood, dress up a horrendous lie, and make it look like the truth. They are experts at that. No one parallels them when it comes to that. So you got to always be in a doubtful mode. That's the correct mode to be in. And if you're asked about being in a doubtful mode, you can say that that's the reason. You have to be doubtful. And the white supremacists are so expert at what they do that sometimes, many times, because they know how to read people, the ones who are really smart, they will tell you the truth, knowing that you won't believe it. And that is a form of the ultimate deception. They'll tell you a bunch of lies, and so you'll get in the habit of not believing anything they say. Then one day they'll come to you and tell you the truth. And if you believe it, it will be to your benefit. But they already know that you won't believe it. And that is the ultimate form of deception. See how smart and conniving and treacherous they are when they are really on their job? And they usually are. Because their job is also their fun. White supremacy is not work for them. It's fun. Their work and their fun are one and the same. And when you can make your work and your fun one and the same, you can get a whole lot done. Because you're not looking forward to getting off from work so you can have some fun. They're always having fun. When they're practicing racism, that's work and that's fun. Their work and their fun is one and the same. That's why they're so efficient at it. When you're having fun at doing if you're doing something that you're getting paid for and getting benefits from, and something you can laugh about at the same time, you can do it forever. The system of white supremacy affords those kind of benefits to the white supremacists. Get paid better than anybody else, and you can laugh at people who you hurt at the same time and get away with it. Excellent situation for someone who is devious and someone who has ill intent. Depends on your purpose in existence. I hope I'm not deviating from the subject too much. Because we must remain focused and clear. I don't always do that. I have a tendency to ramble, so you have to watch me. And for a very logical reason. Because if I can do that, think what the white supremacists can do. You start off talking about one thing, next thing you know, you're talking about something else altogether because they led you there, and you didn't even know it. 6 months later, you say, you know what? I asked them a question, and they never did answer. But it just sounded like they were answering. They're experts at that. Watch for that, too.
I absolutely. I want to get back to justice. I want to grab one of the callers really quick first because I do see a hand up. The person who dialed in on TalkShoe with a hand up in California, your line should be open. If you had a question for Mr. Fuller, your line should be open.
Greetings, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Greetings, Mr. Fuller. I have a question about loneliness and a question about the word nigger and a question about thoughts. Is there any particular, would you have a preference for which one you would like to answer?
No, I'll answer all of them if it's according to the code, if I've thought about it, because that's the way I do things. I mean, that's the correct way to do things. Sometimes people ask me questions, and I simply say I don't know. And the reason I say I don't know is because I don't know. But I've thought about it, I'll give an opinion, because mostly what I do is just give opinions. In fact, everything that I do is an opinion, unless I'm repeating something that somebody else has said that's an absolute fact, and that everybody has accepted as a fact and been proven to be a fact. Because we feel our way when we're trying to solve the race problem, because it's never been solved by anybody. Everybody, lots of people have made an attempt, including me, but it's never been done by anybody. That's why we still have it. So I will, for the sake of clarity and focus, I'll start with the first question that you just asked. Now, what was that question? So it's clear and focused.
The word nigga.
No, I think you said loneliness first, but I can't start with the word nigga.
Okay, loneliness. That's kind of personal, but I was in the context of constructive interactions. I'm having like, what would one do about loneliness in the context of having constructive interactions, where you don't have that many constructive interactions, but and I guess you start feeling like, a lack of those type of interactions bother you, or make you feel lonely or whatnot.
Okay, most people, including myself, we fight loneliness. The average person does not like to be lonely. There's a movie called From Here to Eternity, and I think the character in it was Montgomery Clift, and he asked a lady that was in the movie. He made the remark to her that about something. They were talking about something personal. Anyhow, she says, well, I need you. She said, I want you to be around here because I need you. And the reason I need you is because I'm lonely. And then there was a silence. He didn't say anything. And then she said to him, you think I'm lying, don't you? And he said something that I think is a lesson. Nobody ever lies about being lonely. And I remember that all down through the years. In fact, I have that movie, From Here to Eternity. Now, I think that's true for most people anyway, most of the time, because people don't like to open up and say that they are lonely, that they want somebody to be around them, and the reason they want that person to be around them is because they are lonely. Most people don't want to admit that they're lonely because they think that they are opening themselves up to being vulnerable, to being misused. But if it's the truth, why not say it? If you're lonely, you're lonely. That's all it means. It just means you're lonely. So you want somebody around to keep you from being lonely, somebody to talk to. And there's no harm there as long as the talk is constructive and the activity is constructive. So, so the loneliness is taken care of, and you just take care of it. But try to make it as constructive as possible. Now, sometimes people want to get rid of their loneliness by doing things that are non-constructive. So now we get to focus on that, and that's what should be different. You say, now, we're going to be doing, just because we're lonely, we're just going to do any old silly thing that's going to lead to some trouble. It's just best for us to continue being lonely until we can think of a way of not being lonely and do something constructive at the same time, or at least do something that is not harmful one to the other. So that's what that comes down to, or say anything. Sometimes, like people say, idle chatter, people just talk all the time. Next thing you know, somebody has said something to offend somebody or get on somebody's nerves, and then the loneliness has been taken care of, but now you're going to have another thing. You're going to have conflict. And conflict is not the antidote to loneliness. That's very non-constructive. So that's something people have to be very, very aware of. I think that everybody who thinks about it has seen or engaged in or been in the environment where, in order not to be lonely, everybody just starts talking about any old thing, any kind of way, or doing things, any kind, just whatever anybody thought of doing. I mean, pouring extra sugar in somebody's coffee cup in order to break the silence and have somebody laugh or something like that. Next thing you know, there's gunfire. And 2 hours later, someone is trying to explain how it all came about, and nobody even remembers. They just say, well, everybody started talking, and next thing you know, somebody got mad. I don't even remember who it was. Somebody threw some coffee on somebody, and then somebody else, jumped on the person and whatnot, and then the other person jumped on the person that jumped on the person, and then this other person came in the room and tried to break it up, and somebody punched him, and he pulled out a gun and started shooting at everybody. And that's why you have 4 dead people. That's happening right now, even as we speak. And how did it start? About somebody sitting there and nobody saying nothing, and everybody started getting lonely. And that's the cost of somebody being lonely? Well, now, that cost is too high. So if you're lonely, try to get around in an environment where something constructive is going on to break that loneliness, no matter how long it takes. There are some things that are worse than being lonely. You're not going to be around, you're not going to walk around on this planet very long and stay lonely. At some point, you get little breaks every now and then. Might not be exactly what you want, but then in all relationships, you're not going to get exactly what you want. Anybody who has tried it and they're honest have found that out. I don't care what kind of relationship you have. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be exactly what you want. Why? Because your own mind changes. See, the other person may not ever change, but your mind changes, sometimes from 1 minute to the next. Because along with being lonely, you sometimes get bored. Everybody gets bored. That's why they put people in jail sometimes, to make them bored. Just put them in a little box where they can't talk to anybody. No checkerboard, no cards, no books, no TV set. Can't even look out the window because they covered it over. Or you can get pretty lonely in there, and you can get pretty bored too. And if they let you out to talk to anybody, you'll talk to anybody after about 15 days of that. About anything. Just whatever they want to talk about. You don't care what the subject is. You're ready to talk to somebody. 4 months of talking to yourself, you're ready to talk to somebody else. Anybody, the first person who built a jail found that out, or the first person that was in a jail-like situation. Person lost in the woods. At a certain point, they want to talk to somebody, unless they're the type of person who is a hermit, and that's a very, what you might call, a strange person. Most of the time, even hermits will talk to the ants or the birds. They'll talk to somebody, talk to themselves. But they usually want to talk to something else. Adopt a dog or a cat or something. Talk to the cat. Why? To get rid of loneliness. To get rid of being bored, which is the sister or brother of loneliness. People don't like to be bored. They like to keep their minds active. In the movie Shawshank Redemption, the character played by Morgan Freeman said, talking about Andy Dufresne, another character, said he liked to carve rocks and, make little figurines out of rocks and whatnot, and make checkerboard or chess pieces out of stone. Why? Keep from being bored. And when you're locked up, you do almost anything to keep from being bored. So the bottom line is, try to break your boredom and your loneliness by doing constructive things, reading, studying the things that are around you, learning. See, as long as you keep your mind active, learn. Even if you're not around people, learn. I mean, learn about a tree. Learn about an automotive engine. Lots of people drive cars all the time, never raise that hood. Have somebody else raise it. Just raise the hood sometimes. If you're just standing there waiting and got 4 hours to wait, the hood is already raised and you're waiting to talk to somebody about what's wrong with your car, just take a look at it. But maybe for the first time, just take a look at what's under the hood. It might scare you for a little while, but the more you look, the more you see. If you never look, you don't see. So you just look. And for the first time, you say, oh, that's what a alternator looks like. So somebody might even mention, you might even ask someone passing by, what is that? They say, oh, that's the alternator, sometimes called a generator. Say, oh, what does it do? Say, well, it keeps the electrical system, all your electrical power, your radio that you like to listen to that stereo. Keeps all that going. It stores power and transfers power, electrical power, that is. It doesn't make the car go, as such. Your motor does that. But that alternator, keeps electrical power going in the car. If that goes out, you don't have any electrical power. No, I didn't know that. How long you had this car? Well, I had a lot of cars. I had 8 cars altogether, And you never knew what an alternator was? Not until you told me. Well, now you know. See, so that's something you learn, just standing there. See, there's no such thing as downtime. Some people who have been in the penitentiary and been locked up and whatnot have learned to do that. So some of them, not many, not enough for sure, when they come out knowing stuff. That scene in Shawshank Redemption, a movie that has a lot of lessons, by the way, if you look for the lessons. Andy Dufresne said, well, since I'm here, I'm doing life, I might as well. I just might get lucky enough to go to Sewataneo when I get out of here. And I may never get out. Chances are I won't. But while I'm here, I'm going to ask the warden about starting a library. Because I'm not just going to sit here and look at the wall and get into fights like the rest of these guys. I'm going to start reading and studying. Keep my mind active. Keep from going crazy if nothing else. Not an incorrect idea. That's what I say about loneliness. Now, the next thing is the word nigger. Is that correct? Hello?
Can I? Yeah.
Is anybody out there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Was that what he said?
No, this is the caller.
Oh, okay. You mentioned the word nigger.
Yes.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I can hear you. I can hear you clearly.
Okay. Did you mention the word nigger?
Nigga.
Nigga. Well,
right.
Same thing, I think. It's just, that's people have told me that's just another way of saying the same thing. Only that's supposed to mean something else, something endearing, I guess. I don't know. I've never had that explained to me, but I think basically it refers to a black person. Well, I have in my word guide, and what I've said for years, that we sometimes called it in the old days the magic word, because when somebody says it under some circumstances, you get a whole bunch of conflict real fast, particularly if it's anything involving white and black people, and the word nigger is used by a white person, then that will trigger some action, conflict, hostile action, as a rule. Now, so some people call certain words as having more power than other words, and that's considered one of the most powerful words in the English language. Now, why is the word powerful? And I have thought for some years now, some decades, and it hasn't caught on, but I think that it's the truth of the matter in answer to the question, why does that word have power? And I came to the conclusion, it may be the incorrect conclusion. I came to the conclusion, stumbled upon it, by looking at the word and looking it up in dictionaries. The word has no definition. Now, it sounds like it has a definition, but all the definitions I have found, it usually goes like this. Nigger, a derogatory term for a person of the black race, Negro race, African American, etc. A dark-skinned person. Derogatory term. That's the key. The word, the key word in all of that talk is derogatory. Sometimes in italics. Sometimes underlined. A derogatory term for a black person. Now, you ask the logical question. Why is the word derogatory? It doesn't say why. And when I've talked to people, they're not saying why. It's almost like saying, you're a nigger, and that's derogatory. And if you ask, well, why is that derogatory? And the answer is somewhat vague, like, oh, you don't know, do you? And that's supposed to make you mad. And I can see why. Because any word that doesn't have a clear definition, and you are being called it, and it's supposed to be derogatory, meaning they're saying something awful about you, but you don't know what it is that they're saying awful about you, you might get angry if you get drawn into it. So that's the key to the power of the word nigger. So, what do you do about it? 3 things. These are my suggestions, according to compensatory logic. If a person calls me a nigger in a very calm voice, very calm way, you don't want to throw gasoline on the fire, and you're curious, if you want to react to it, you can choose not to react to it, period, because that's a choice. You can not say anything, not do anything. So what? You know, the world goes on. That had been my choice for many a year. But then I outlined, if I am going to say something, what would I say in response to that? First thing I want to do is get clarity, because that's in any situation that you're in. So you ask the person, what's a nigger? That's the logical question. And the person might say, oh, you're a nigger. I just called you one. And you say, okay. Why are you calling me a nigger? Because I asked you, what's a nigger? And he said, I'm one. So, you know, whatever that is. That's still not answering my question, but, you know, I'm trying to get to the answer. What's a nigger? He says, I'm a nigger, whatever that is. Are you calling me a nigger? You know, yes, I'm calling you a nigger. And so I say, okay, what's a nigger? Are you calling me a nigger? The answer is yes. What do you think should be done with a nigger? For a nigger, about a nigger, against a nigger? And let them answer. And ask in all areas of activity. Because at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, basically what you want to know is not what the person is saying, even though you're asking that person that, but you want to know ultimately what is the person going to do about you being a nigger. Key word here is do, D-O. If you're not going to do anything about me being a nigger, then so what? You can call me anything if you're not going to do anything. You say, well, you know, the person might say, well, like there's an old joke, and I don't want anybody to laugh about this because it's a joke that's not a joke in a way of speaking, because it's supposed to be based on a truthful incident that a person told me about. A fellow told me about it many, many years ago, back in the early 1950s. He said a white man came into a pool hall full of black people, back when they had a lot of pool halls in. And he just walked in a jovial manner and walked right up to the first black person he saw and said, who's the head nigger around here? I'm looking for the head nigger. And so the room went silent. Everybody stopped playing pool and everything. Everybody looked up startled and whatnot. And the person he was talking to looked at him almost with fright in his eyes for the white man who had just walked in and made that announcement. Who's the head nigger in here? I'm looking for the head nigger. And he said, wait a minute, buddy. He said, you don't come in here talking that kind of talk. Do you know where you are? Do you know what you are doing? Do you know what might happen to you? And so then the white man got a little bit frightened, according to the way the story went. And he said, oh, I didn't mean to offend anybody. I'm just looking for the head nigger. I got $100 for him. And then it's reported. I don't know whether this is a joke or not, but this is the way it's reported to me. The black guy that he was talking to said, oh, I'm the head nigger. If you don't believe it, ask all the other niggers in here. Now, that's supposed to be a true story. Now, what am I saying by just recounting that? I'm saying, depends on how the person wants to look at the use of the word nigger. That's where the rappers are correct. Why? Because the word has no definition so far. But I gave it one. Now, here we get to this bottom line. I say a nigger is a non-white person who is subject to white supremacy. And so that fits me perfectly. When people call me a nigger, I'm looking at it within that context. And if it's a white person doing it, if they recognize that much, that's saying one thing to me, that I'm most likely looking at a white supremacist. Because if he knows that I'm subject to white supremacy, I want him to know that. Yes. And the way for me not to be a nigger is not to be subject to white supremacy. And that's why I'm writing books. That's why I'm having this conversation right now. Because that is a logical definition. That's a definition that I gave it since it doesn't have a definition. It makes people angry because it doesn't have a definition. Once you give a definition to a word, you can handle it. So I'm giving the word nigger a definition, a logical definition, and a truthful definition. That's the only definition that word can have that makes sense. I don't know of any other definition that would fit. So a nigger is a person who has been made subject to the system of white supremacy. A non-white person who, naturally, who is subject to the system of white supremacy. I qualify for that. Now, am I saying I'm proud of it? I should go around calling people that, anything like that? No. Because that's a terrible thing to be. But that's what I am. A victim of white supremacy. It's equivalent to the word victim. If you're not a victim of white supremacy, I don't care how black you are, you can't be a nigger. It's impossible. According to what? According to logic. It's impossible. Once you are out from under white supremacy, it's impossible to be a nigger, because that's what a nigger is. A captive. A person who has been beaten down because and misused and mistreated because of color. That's the only thing you can possibly be that would make sense, that would fit that word perfectly. Now, does that make it true because I said so? No. But if you think about it and think of all the other characteristics and the way the word has been used for many, many decades by everybody, black and white, in every type of context, I think the average person thinking of the classic definition, the standard definition, a derogatory term for a Negro African American, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's unacceptable. I think a logical term, a term that would actually empower people like Neely Fuller and put the white supremacists on the defensive. See, I'm not just coming up with a quip. I'm talking about you're going on the offense now. When you say, oh, when you call me a nigger, what you're calling me is a victim of white supremacy. I agree with that. That's a description of my status. So you recognize that I am a victim of white supremacy, which is what I've been trying to tell you all the time. Now you're saying that you recognize it. So now that we recognize that, the question is, am I supposed to be that? And the answer is no, which means, since you know so much about what I am, how come you are not working on the project, sir, of getting rid of the system of white supremacy so that I won't be a nigger no more? What do you do every day? How do you spend your time? Why aren't you working on this project that would make you a patriot? Oh, yes, we're talking about patriotism now, because that's another word. How do you get to be a patriot on this system? On this planet, whether you're white or non-white. If you say you're a patriot, you can't believe in white supremacy. That's one of the major requirements, if not the major requirement. According to what? Logic. Why? Because the system of racism is the worst system on the planet. So you can't be a patriot unless you're against the system of white supremacy. You are not patriotic. I don't care how many flags you fly. That's the first order of business. That's one word I'll just switch to right quick. We went from nigger to patriot. Okay? Oh, yes, whether you're white or non-white, if you are not about the business of trying to get rid of white supremacy and replacing it with a system of justice, you are not a patriot, because that's the biggest problem on the planet. And you are not working on the biggest problem on the planet and calling yourself a patriot, that doesn't compute. So you can just put all those flags down and stop singing all those songs and all like that until you can get on the wavelength where you're supposed to be. And you can say all this to someone who calls you a nigger. You don't fight against that word or fight the person that uses the word. That's not solving anything. You explain what's going on here in this conversation and give it some meaning that will work for what? For a constructive result. That's the procedure. I guess we can go on and on and on about examples and all like that, but we will go to the third word here.
Mr. Fuller,
I don't remember what it was.
Thank you for your answers. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you for that. I don't want to take up any more time.
I dealt with loneliness, and I dealt with the word nigger. And it was another word, but you said you'll just dismiss and move on to someone else.
Yeah, they might have better, or not better, but other topics, but your answers were...
Okay, well, at some future date, we can get back to the next word, because we don't let words just hang out there. All words, once they're on the table, have to be dealt with. Every word, any word that anybody comes up with, we're supposed to address that word. That's a part of the code.
All right, I'll ask you next time.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you very much. And I hope that at least the things that I said are something to think about. See, I'm not asking people to just rush, and do what I'm saying, going along with the suggestion or even agreeing with it. I'm just saying think about it, because you want to think about something before you start doing it.
Justice, if you had some more questions you wanted to ask Mr. Fuller, your line should be open.
In your code book, it says on page 61, avoid the production of offspring. Until you know and understand what white supremacy, racism is, and how it works, in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, until you have the will and the ability to adequately feed them, clothe them, and house them, until you have the will and the ability to explain to them in a manner that they will understand what white supremacy, racism is, and how it works in all areas of activity, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and more. Why do you want to avoid the production of offspring until you do these things?
Because you're bringing offspring in the world before you have made preparation to take care of those offspring in the manner in which they should be taken care of. And you're doing it in an environment that you have no control over. So that's why I say avoid it. Now, have I violated that part of the code myself? Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. And have millions of others done so? Yes. And will continue to do so? Yes. But I put it in there anyway for people to think about and act on if they possibly can, and don't give over to what they call, the attractions of circumstances the way that they are, and get involved in sexual activity. And the next thing you know, you have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 offspring. Now you're in the situation where you're actually contributing to the slaves on the slave ship because you're producing more slaves. That's what you're basically doing. You're bringing more people into the world who are immediately going to become a part of running the system of white supremacy, which is something the system of white supremacy supports itself. They control it because every now and then they do what they call racial population tailoring. In other words, they kill the people after they get here. Some people they kill before they get here because they're about killing. They like it, okay? But they want always to be the numbers of non-white people on the planet that they can control. When they get to the place that looks like they can't control them, they kill them. And they have all kinds of ways of killing them. And one big way is to see to it they never get here in the first place. And they can do that with the environment. Just set up the environment so, people just start dropping like flies and whatnot. You got malaria, you got AIDS, you got, just from the act of sexual intercourse itself. I mean, they can wipe out thousands and thousands of people, or disease them up so that they can't have offspring. Or like one doctor said some years ago, the way to reduce the black population so that these Negro women don't keep having these dumb babies that are dumb just like they are. That's the way he expressed it. I mean, not good for nothing, said, is to pay them not to have babies so that they don't keep adding to the problems of the world. See, and that's the way they put it. But we shouldn't feel bad about what they say because white supremacists say almost anything. See, but I'm saying if we have the offspring, so be it. That's also a part of the code because that we're most likely to have them. So therefore, when they show up, what you do, you teach them as best you can that they are on their own. You will help them as best you can, but basically they are on their own. Reason being, look at the world like it's a giant slave ship, because it is. And you're born on that ship, and you're classified as a slave, not as a captain or a senior member of the crew. You are a slave. You're a cargo on the slave ship if you're classified as non-white. So what you do, say, well, I'm here. So you work to change the nature of the ship. Instead of a slave ship, it becomes a ship of hope, a ship of progress, a ship of constructive activity. And it doesn't have a cargo of people who are beat up on and misused and mistreated. You have a cargo of things. If you going to haul anything at all that's going to be helpful to people in a constructive manner, not in a non-constructive way like the slave system is, like the system of racism is. You know, you don't get rid of things. The things that have been put here by the creator of the universe are put here to be used, but they are not to be used to mistreat anything, including the environment that the things themselves are in. So you want correct action and interaction between people and things. And you can't do it in the system of white supremacy. So you have to get rid of the system of white supremacy. So anybody you bring into the world, just put them on that wavelength. But let them know that you can't guarantee anything. Because I'm here. I haven't guaranteed the people who are being born right now. And there are people being born as we speak all over the world right now. What guarantees can I give them with the shape that I'm in? I'm still subject to the system of white supremacy. I can't guarantee anybody anything. So when some black male says that he loves some black female and he's going to look out for her and protect her and he's going to do this and he's going to do that, he can't guarantee none of that. I don't care how many vows he takes to a preacher. He can't guarantee not one of those things that he's saying. And that's the truth. Why? Because the white supremacists will tell him what he can do and what he can't do. Because the first thing you have to do is please them. And anybody who says that you're not doing that is not telling the truth. And the people who try it and really mean it and take it all the way are dead. Because that's what goes with that package. You're dealing with Tony Soprano. Anybody has even seen the look on his face, even in a movie. I mean, these are actors, but it works on the same principle as what we call gangland, the system of white supremacy. It's a gangster operation. Works on the same principles as the Corleones and the Godfather and the Sopranos in the TV series. Tony Soprano says, end of discussion. Under certain circumstances, it's the circumstances now that you look at. You're standing there in the alley with him. He's got Christopher there. Some of the people out there who have seen The Sopranos, that's his nephew. He's got Johnny Sacks. And he's got Paulie. Anybody who knows the character Paulie in The Sopranos, now you're standing there alone with those characters in an alley at midnight in Jersey, and they're saying to you one more word and you're dead. I don't think you'll say one more word. But that's the world that we're in. And the non-white people who are born into this world, you come right under the Sopranos. You come right under the Corleones. You come under the Simon Legrees. You come right under the World KKK. You're born in it. You have to realize that and act accordingly. And think that anything harmful can happen at any time. You got to get this in your mind. We're in a war. You're born in a war, in the middle of a war. Just like being born on a battlefield. And just act accordingly. You don't have to panic. Because panic means that you get to be all thumbs. You don't know what you're doing. You can't handle anything. You just realize the circumstances that you're in and be realistic about it. And more than anything, don't lie to yourself about your strengths or your weaknesses. Because that's not going to harm anybody but you, ultimately. When you start lying to yourself about your actual circumstances. And don't let anybody else talk you into lying to yourself. That's why lots of non-white people are behind bars. They lie to themselves. That's one fast way to get there. Start thinking that they're tougher than they are. Start thinking that they're smarter than they are. Don't ever think that you're smarter than you really are. And don't let anybody talk you into thinking that you're smarter than you really are. If you're going to be smart, you better be smart. And one thing that proves you're not smart is when you're in greater confinement. That's proof right there. The person who was smart is the person that put you in there. By greater confinement, I mean what we call prison, jail, all this other nickel and dime stuff that black people get locked up for, drive-by shootings, carjackings, and all like that. You're proving you're not smart right there. You're not smarter than the white supremacists, because they're the ones who lock you up and tell and show you in as you know what I mean, I hope, uncertain terms, you're not smart. I don't care how you flex your muscles and how many weights you lift and how heavy your voice is and how many tattoos you got. Look at where you are, behind bars, trying to hold your pants up. And you say you're smart? Well, I was smart when I was on the outside. Was smart when you was on the outside until you got on the inside. Duh. No such thing as a smart prisoner. Ever.
If non-white people stopped buying racist man and racist woman stuff, do you think that would play a big role in eliminating the system of racism, white supremacy?
If non-white people do what now? This is my fault. This miscommunication. Sometimes I guess my phone or something, or it's me. I can't hear things the way that I should.
It's probably the white people. If non-white people stopped buying racist man and racist woman stuff, white people, do you think that would play a big role on eliminating the system of racism, white supremacy?
Well, if I understand the question, it's all about codification. That's why I have here in my notes what to do, which is all through the books I've written, the code book and the word guide, basic code book and the word guide. Each individual victim of white supremacy will use selected parts of any suggestion, not just suggestion that I make, because the code book that I've written is a book of suggestions, but any suggestion that anybody makes, and you examine the suggestion. That's the first thing you do. Somebody suggests something to you, no matter what it is. First, look at the suggestion. You don't even have to check out the person who's making the suggestion. Look at the suggestion itself. Somebody is saying you should be doing something. Like I do that. I say people should be doing this. People should be doing that. Don't check Fuller out. That's not the main thing to check out. The main thing to check out is what he is saying that people should be doing or should not be doing. And look for the logic. I say don't follow people, including Neely Fuller. Follow the logic. See if what he's suggesting is logical. And if you don't know, just say to yourself, you don't know whether that's logical or not, but you will check it out. You will see if the people do it or people say it, because it's all a matter of saying and doing, and that's what I call codification, using a code. Code is just a way of saying things, a way of doing things to get the best result, or to get the worst result, depending on what your intent is. But if everybody does that, that's why I call it the United Independent Compensatory System, because it's tailored to the individual. Each individual is saying and doing something all day long, even if you're asleep. Being asleep is doing something. You are asleep. Now, it's a way to sleep. It's a way to do everything in the best manner. So how should a person sleep? They should sleep so that they get adequate rest. That's the whole point for going to sleep. Adequate rest for what reason? How do you know you had adequate rest? when you get up, you're not sleepy anymore. That's how you know. Your body tells you that. And if you're not sleepy anymore, it means you can do things in a more efficient manner. You're not going to go to sleep at the stoplight behind the wheel, and then somebody behind you is blowing the horn and that wakes you up. That means you have not had adequate sleep. And you might be a danger to yourself and somebody else. So I just mentioned sleep, but that's in anything. Sleeping, eating, walking, talking. See, if you're going to talk, think about what you're saying so that you get the correct result. Something I don't always do. Something I said something the other day to a manager of a business, and I said I shouldn't have said it that way. Because why? The person had a reaction that was not leading to anything constructive. It was going to lead to conflict. And so I said, the way that I expressed myself, I didn't make the best choice of words. So always think about what you're going to say before you say it. You'll make mistakes, but you correct your mistakes as you go along. And you try to codify it so that when that situation comes up again, the best way that you said it that worked, that's the way you use every time, in every circumstance that's similar to that circumstance. That's all it is, doing and saying, all over the world, all the time, 24 hours a day, every day. Everything is a matter of doing and saying. And codification is about doing everything that you do that gets the most constructive result, and saying everything that you say that produces the most constructive result. And don't do it and don't say it as best you can until you know, before you do it or say it, what the result is going to be. You should know in advance, because you should have run tests on it, so that when a situation like that comes up again, you say, well, I'm going to say this because I know that it works. I'm not guessing. I know that this will work. When I say this, this will work. And it's the same way when you do something. And this entire world would be a much better place. And we will solve this problem of racism and everything else. It's just a matter of doing and saying, and get each individual to do it and say it. Because everything should be tailored to the individual. There's no such thing as the masses of people. That's an incorrect perspective. Each individual is an individual. And that individuality in each person should be given the utmost regard. Because whatever created that individual did it for a reason. And you should regard that. Why? Because I am an individual person. That's why. And I should be given regard for that. And I should regard myself as I'm here. I didn't choose to be here. I didn't have anything to do with it. But I'm here. So I must be here for a reason. And obviously that reason is to solve problems. Why? Because I'm looking at problems all the time. So that must be the reason. Solve the problem I'm looking at. I hope I answered the question in a rambling way, maybe, that could have some focus somewhere in that mix.
Do you feel that black people will ever have a strong political voice in this area of the world, in the formal sense?
Black people having a strong political voice. Black people have a strong political voice anytime they say something that has strength. Because what is politics? People into action. That's all it is. When people say that, well, are you in politics? What's the answer to that question? The truthful answer. The answer is yes. And politics is in me. Why? Because I'm a person. Politics always refers to people. People doing what? People interacting with other people. When you say good morning to someone, you are engaging in a political act. You sometimes hear the expression, you can't mix politics with religion. That doesn't make sense. It's not logical. Religion is what? A strong belief. You have to have a person. If a person is going to interact with other people who have strong beliefs backed up by action, that's what a religion is, then you have religion and politics. If you believe something and you're talking to somebody else about what you believe, you have already mixed religion with politics, because you're talking about your strong belief and you're acting on it by talking to another person about it and trying to get them to listen to your vision of what you believe in strongly. Trying to get them to do something, which is believe in what you're saying, for one thing. That's a political act. And you consider yourself a religious person because you are doing it with a real belief, a genuine, truthful belief you're not putting on. So you're engaging in, by doing that, religion and politics. You have already mixed the two. Even when you make the statement, don't mix religion with politics. You have already done the very thing that you said don't do, just by you making that statement. Everybody who just heard what I just said, think about it. Think about it. First of all, by defining what is a religion and what is politics. Politics is any interaction between people. If you're in contact with people and saying and doing something, you're engaging in politics right there. And if you're talking about something that you believe in strongly and acting on what you're talking about, you have mixed religion with politics. Think about it. The textbook workbook for victims of racism, the subtitle is Thought, Speech, and or Action. So what I'm requesting now is just think about the statement that I just made. You have already mixed religion with politics when you say to someone, don't mix religion with politics. You have already done the very thing that you said don't do. If you believe in what you're saying, that's the requirement in order to meet the religious requirement. Hello, is anybody out there?
Yes. Halloween is tomorrow. How can non-white people that are informed about racism, white supremacy, get other non-white people informed about what so-called Halloween is really about?
Well, in the textbook for victims of white supremacy, I say if you don't read anything else in the book, or don't care to read it, or don't have time to read it, page 58, 59, and 60. That's under economics, the first area of activity. And it talks about the use of time and energy. And they're relatively short. There's just 4 things to do. And these are the basic things that people can do. Now, I would like for them to read the whole book at some time or another. I request that in the writings in the book. But if a person doesn't do anything else, they can just read those 4 things. These are suggestions about what to do, about racism, about everything, about all problems. It's just 4. And they're on page 58, 59, and 60, relatively short. And the first one is producing something, repairing. I'm paraphrasing now. You produce or you repair or you clean something of value and use it for a constructive purpose. Everything you do is supposed to be constructive. That's number 1. Number 2, exchange views with people about ways of producing justice and or ways of ending the system of white supremacy, meaning replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice. You exchange views with people about doing that. Now, we're doing that right now. We've been doing that for several hours now. So you can't get lost if you just follow what's on page 58, 59, and 60. Now, number 3, eat and sleep correctly and only as necessary. Everybody eats and everybody sleeps all over the world. See, these are universal things. These are things that apply to people wherever they are. Eat and sleep correctly. Now, what do I mean by correctly? I mean, don't oversleep, meaning you stay in bed when you know you're not sleepy. So now you're wasting a whole lot of time. You're trying to go to sleep. But your body will tell you when to go to sleep. Okay? So trying to go to sleep, I mean, usually doesn't work. That's when you start taking all kind of pills and whatnot, and the next thing you know, you're doing more harm to yourself. See, but I don't know of anybody that walked around on the planet and never went to sleep. I hear people saying, I just can't get any sleep. It's impossible for me to go to sleep. No, it isn't. You just keep staying up. You're going to sleep sometime or another. Even if you drop dead, that's what they call a big sleep. But you are going to close your eyes at some point, and hopefully you'll wake up. Now, people might have a problem staying awake, but I don't know of anybody that ever walked around on this planet and never went to sleep. I never even heard of anybody like that. So that cliche about you can't sleep, it means you can't sleep when you need to go to sleep, maybe, on the kind of you're excited about something or worried about something. But I do believe the way the body is made, that the average person or creature or tree or something will go to sleep at some time or another. That's part of the process. So eat and sleep correctly and only as necessary. What about eating? Well, that changes from time to time, and depending on the person and where you are. Because the food, the artificial food, the plastic food that has been produced by the white supremacists is so poisonous that it's very difficult to find anything that has real nutrition. Everything is imitation, just about. I mean, they load you up with all types of artificial this and artificial that. It looks like food, tastes like food, but it's really not nourishing. But the white supremacists don't care, because they are not really crazy about living anyway. They're just crazy about existing just enough to mistreat people. As long as they can keep the motor running enough to do that, they're okay with it, for the most part. Now, number 4, sexual intercourse no more than twice a week, and very little expenditure of resources in supporting that sexual intercourse. Reason being, we're talking about economics now, not just talking about sex. These things are listed on economics, because economics is about time and energy. Sometimes people get so caught up in sexual activity, just going on and on and on and on and on, just like they do with food sometimes, and becoming overweight. You can become oversaturated with sexual activity, and this starts interfering with everything else that you should be doing. Like everything else, like what? Number 1, producing, repairing, cleaning. You know, just repairing the car. You know, people engaging in sex, and the car was supposed to be gone to the repair shop 2 days ago. Now that transmission is really acting up, and it's going to cost you $2,000 more. That's because of this sexual activity that you said, well, I'm not going to bother with it. Today is my day off, and I don't want to be bothered with these mechanics. So I'm just going to lay up here in the bed. These are practical things, but they are transforming things. They are things that will help to solve the problem of racism, I believe. If all the non-white people on this planet start doing the 4 things that are listed on page 58, 59, and 60 of the textbook for victims of white supremacy, the white supremacists will be fit to be tied. They will fly into a rage, because this will all be those four things changing the things that they want their victims to be doing and the way to go about doing it. It will alter everything. Just these four things. I believe that. I could be in error, but I can envision this happening in a practical way, and I know what the white supremacists would have to do something about that. They'd either have to capitulate or become extremely violent, but they'd have to make some type of alteration in the way they do business of white supremacy, because it means the behavior of black people will be bad for their business just by black people doing those four simple things as individuals, not necessarily joining an organization or waving a flag or going into the streets and shouting, just by doing these four simple things wherever they happen to be. Some people might say restrict their activities to these four things. It's not restrictive at all, because I covered everything. Those four things are covering just about everything that people are really interested in if they tell the truth all the way. But it means the way you go about doing it. Like number 2, conversations. This conversation we've been having here tonight, today, wherever you happen to be out there. That's number 2 on the list. You can't get lost. It's impossible to get lost if you're doing one of these four things, because they are things that blend right into the natural course of things that people do anyway, but it steers it in such a way that you have constructive results. That's the only difference. You cut down on some things and add to some things. That's all you're really doing. Cutting the waste in your time and energy, and you make yourself effective. Now with that, I think that I'm going to have to, at this time, terminate the back and forth exchange of views, if everybody aboard does not mind. Hello?
Gus, do you have any questions, or do the callers have any questions?
I'm appreciative for Mr. Fuller's time. I'm thankful that he stayed on. I can get him next time. It's no worries.
Okay. So now I have a request. As usual, am I going to be given access to this discussion this evening? Because could you see that I get that about a podcast or whatever you do, so that I can receive it, sir? Because I like to critique what I do. Because, like I said all along, I make mistakes. I don't want to keep making the same mistakes.
Yes, we will get you a CD. I'm a little behind bringing those out, but yes, you've been on quite a few times since I sent you the last batch. But yeah, I'll get some of the previous programs that you've done on CDs as well and just get them to you in the mail.
Because I do grade myself on these discussions and whatnot. I use what they call in the movie rating system, that 4-star system. I have never rated myself above 2 stars. And I do it just in 2 categories, clarity and focus. I don't do it for content purposes, because I really don't know whether what I'm saying is guaranteed or not. These are just suggestions, observations and suggestions, just like I say in the back of the book. So I don't grade myself on what I might call whether or not I have found the truth more than anybody else on the planet or whatever. I just say, these are observations, and I want to be clear in presenting these observations, and I want to stay focused, because these are my weakest points, I do believe. Sometimes I have problems staying focused on what it is I'm trying to say. I'll jump from one subject to another. Other times, I'm not clear, making myself clear in what I'm saying, even though I think I'm making myself clear. And people sometimes, out of a desire to be polite, won't tell me that I'm not making myself clear. And that's not supposed to happen. People are supposed to tell me, well, they heard what I said, but it's not clear to them. So I'm supposed, it's no point in talking, and I'm talking and not making myself clear. I'm coming across as just handing out a, mumble jumble, as they say. And I don't want to do that. Nobody should want to do that. So I have to critique myself on that. And sometimes I discover myself that, well, I could have said that better, because we're supposed to always improve. That's a part of counter-racist codification. That's a part of the process of becoming what we should have been in the first place, universal man, universal woman. Everybody's supposed to be that, white and non-white. Why? Because we're in the universe, and we should have the best qualifications that measure up to being in the universe. And with that, I'll have to bow out now. And thank you, and good night.
You have a good evening, Mr. Fuller.
Sure.
Bye.
Context of white supremacy. Did see a hand, but it went up kind of late. Got to get those hands up earlier. I will take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back. We'll make sure we get our news report in, and we will make sure everyone gets the information for the 500th broadcast tomorrow, Dr. Kamal Kamban, October 31st. We'll do quick commercial break, and we'll definitely make sure to get that news report in. We'll be right back. Context of white supremacy.
RacismDaily.com, your number one source for global news reports on race, racism, and overt actions of white supremacy. From Asia to the Americas, to Europe, to Australia, to Africa, racism is not a thing of the past, it is our current reality. Be informed, be globally informed. You should be the first to know. RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com, RacismDaily.com.
Is racism hurting you? On issues of race, are you unable to speak, think, and act with clarity and confidence? Are you tired of laughing when nothing is funny, smiling when you are not happy, agreeing when you really disagree? At counterracism.com, you can learn specific strategies and techniques to counter the behaviors of the people who practice racism in all areas of activity, using words correctly, following counter-racist logic, even counter-racist science projects designed to reveal what racism is, how it works, and how to counter it. The open-source code writing format allows you to pick and choose from a variety of counter-racist suggestions so you can produce the code that works for you. Stop by counterracism.com today and help replace racism with justice.
That's counter-racism.com.
Do you need a one-stop shop for all of your multimedia needs? Triumphant Multimedia is a skilled team of professionals with a passion for great marketing and chic design. Our specialties include consulting, brand development, copywriting, and creative graphic design that's second to none. We also offer photography, photo retouching, videography, and video editing. At Triumphant Multimedia, our goal is to provide highly effective creative solutions built to suit any individual need or budget. Give us a call at 678-732-8067 or check us out online at trimultimedia.com.
Hi everybody, welcome. This is Justice with the Cows Radio program. If you want to learn about, understand, and counter racism, white supremacy, be sure not to miss a Cows episode. We keep them jammed packed with constructive information to sharpen your use of words to help eliminate the system of racism, white supremacy, ASAP. Also, for more information on racism, white supremacy, and to invest in my counter-racist efforts, please visit my blog, justdojustice.blogspot.com.
just saying just buckets and buckets of words.
Yo, this is Wade, one half of the Black Twins. I want y'all to check something out. Our latest project, Double Consciousness, the mixed message. This will be dropping October 2nd, 2011, featuring various audio from Umar Abdullah Johnson and Dr. Kambom, just to name a few. You can download this at www.gagmusicroom.bandcamp.com and at stlouismixtapes.com. That's STLmixtapes.com. Replace white supremacy with justice now.
This mixtape is only for victims of racism and white supremacy.
Context of white supremacy. Again, we will be back tomorrow. 500th broadcast for the cows, white people permitting. Dr. Kamal Kambon making his third visit to the cows. It'll be same broadcast time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can dial in, listen on the phone line. You can listen online. Same number, 760-569-7676. And the code is 564-943-pound. I will give out Mr. Fuller's the link so that folks, if you need to get a copy of the code book or the word guide, you can print the order form and just send that in the mail. The address is tiny.cc/Fuller in all caps. Give it out one more time, and it should be in the description if you're listening at TalkShoe. The address again, tiny, tiny.cc/Fuller, and Fuller has to be in all caps. Right on. I will get our news report in really quick. I just want to get in. I saw that there is a massive snowstorm on the east coast of the area of the world known as the United States. I wasn't really sad. I hope, we have a lot of folks who listen in on that side of the world. Hope everybody is safe. I know a lot of people are without electricity. I hope folks are staying warm and, are able to get food, water, all that good stuff. But hopefully the inclement weather will disrupt non-white people, confused victims who had plans to participate in the foolishness tomorrow, so-called Halloween. Hopefully the snow and everything will disrupt some of those activities and keep people inside where they can do something a little more constructive with their Monday evening. That said, this news report was mailed to me from Blacka, a previous guest and investor, longtime listener. We were just last week talking with Mr. Anthony Browder, and he talked about Fox News and how they definitely are not a friend to black people. And he was saying for everyone who tunes in to Fox News now, and they are accustomed to seeing Bill O'Reilly and Pat Buchanan and white people who are being pretty open with regards to racism, white supremacy, that if you remember when Fox started, that they had a lot of black television programs, most of which, if not all, was black buffoonery, black pathology, Living Color, Living Single, Rock, the Arsenio Hall Show. It's quite a few programs with a lot of Martin Lawrence, quite a few. I could spend some time. A lot of black entertainers who are regarded as big-time stars. Many of them, they were on some of the early sitcoms that were broadcast on the Fox network in the late 80s, early 90s. This article, from Dr. Boyce, Fox is bringing back In Living Color. Most loved In Living Color back in the day. The skits were original and creative, and the cast was incredibly talented. The show produced household names like Jamie Foxx, Jim Carrey, Damon Wayans, and quite a few others. Well, there's good news for fans of the show. Fox says that they are going to bring the comedy back after nearly 20 years. Perhaps this might give us a reason to start watching television again. Keenen Ivory Wayans is going to be the executive producer for the new show. Fox has ordered 2 half-hour specials to be shown as a part of its 25th anniversary celebration. There are options in the contract such that if the show is successful, it may come back on the air for good. In Living Color hit the scene in April of 1990. It was responsible for bringing hip-hop dancing into the mainstream with the ever-so-famous Fly Girls, Jennifer Lopez, and also brought the kind of comedy that you didn't see on TV back then or even now. The height of the show's fame occurred when the cast pulled in 25 million viewers during halftime of the 1992 Super Bowl. Although some shows can get away with severe political incorrectness, South Park, Family Guy, this liberty hasn't always been true for black actors and directors, especially on issues of race. Eventually, Fox got rid of the show after the Wayans family irritated a few too many big shots. As a college student, I remember the show setting trends and making waves in ways that made us all proud. I've always felt a kindred spirit with the Wayans family, for most of their films and television shows have been witty, sharp, and downright hilarious. Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking juice in the hood continues to be the movie that has me on the floor laughing while all my friends look at me cross-eyed. Believe it or not, I'd always known that one day I would meet the Wayans family up close so I could tell them personally how much I love their style of comedy. In 2006, I had the chance to sit with Damon Wayans for 30 minutes as we waited to appear on the ESPN show, Quite Frankly, with Stephen A. Smith. The chance meeting allowed me to tell Damon that I considered the Wayans family to be the most brilliant family in all of show business. It broke my heart to see a highly successful show destroyed because the powers that be were unable to digest direct and intelligent social critiques from African American entertainers. My favorite skit, you can probably guess it, Homie the Clown. It's hard to think that a clown would provide such an extraordinary and hilarious display of the frustrations of being a black man in America. I'm having a hard time reading that, keeping a straight face. Today is a new day, or so we think. Let's hope the Wayans family is not punished for being creative and empowered. There is no show I can think of outside of Saturday Night Live that has produced as many stars as this one, and its achievements have rarely been paralleled. Fox is a network that has put shows on the air that have offended nearly everyone. 2 of their shows, Family Guy and American Dad, are beyond edgy. I'm sure the members of the Wayans family are no less socially conscious and critical than they were in the early 1990s. So it'll be interesting to see if Fox gives the Wayans family the same creative freedoms being granted to everyone else. After all, we do live in a quote-unquote post-racial America, right? Let me go ahead and slap a big old laugh out loud at the end of that one. I'll doubt the show lasts for half a season. Again, this is Fox bringing back In Living Color, but can they handle it? This is on blacklikemoi.com from Dr. Boyce. Dr. Boyce Watkins. Dr. Boyce Watkins. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. If folks have not seen In Living Color, I'm sure it's online. You can watch some of the episodes. You can probably go to the library and get seasons of it on DVD. Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, they had a couple skits where you had black people talking about racism, white supremacy, and one of them was Damon Wayans in a clown suit. They had another skit where they had a black male in greater confinement, aka prison, where he would use words in man. It's like white people had different skits, and they had this one where they had a black male in greater confinement. It was like they were mocking our communication deficiencies. but they have a black male in greater confinement, and he'd be using all these big words incorrectly and trying to talk about racism, white supremacy from greater confinement. They also infamous sketch, Men in Films, where they had two anti-sexual black males discussing different films. I believe David Allen Greer was one of the males in that skit, and I think Damon Wayans was the other male in the skit. Lots of different skits. I think if you understand racism, white supremacy, and you look at that skit, I don't think you'll see very much constructive value to that program. I think it benefits racist man and racist woman just continuing to show black pathology and to depict black people as clowns and buffoons to the entire world. But that's on the horizon, I guess, at least 2 episodes and perhaps more. Again, we'll be back tomorrow. The program time is the same as today, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Dr. Kamal Kamban returns to the cows. Very much looking forward to having him back on the program. He will have some words about the so-called holiday tomorrow. As I said, he wrote in his book, Subtle Suicide, that October 31st marks the beginning of the subtle suicide season. Very much looking forward to having him on the program for our 500th broadcast. In that spirit, I'm going to conserve my energy and prep for tomorrow. Please share the program, share the links if you think this is constructive. If you think black people would benefit from hearing the cows, share the links. You can post them on Twitter, Facebook, all of that. You can let people know about the program tomorrow. And again, same number to dial, 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943-pound. I will close out. I will reiterate from the listener who mailed her question in the area of the world known as Canada. If a white person tells you that they're confused about racism and they're trying to get you to share information about racism, white supremacy, that is game. You have to recognize it as such. White people are really good at trying to extract information from their victims. I think often they're just trying to see how much we know. To see, okay, we might need to step things up a bit. They're getting a bit less confused. You really want to be asking them questions and not trying to show them how much you know. That white person says that they're confused about racism. Man, that is, I mean, you talk about clowning. That is all-star clowning right there. If that white person knows that they're white, that's about all you need to know to efficiently practice racism, white supremacy around non-white people. You know that you're white and you know how to pick out the people that are not white. You can have a blast anywhere in the known universe as long as racism, white supremacy exists. And anyone, if you're confused about that, we can clean that up tomorrow. But I hope that makes sense. You can go back and rewind and hear Mr. Fuller's take on that question. Again, we'll be back tomorrow. Dr. Kamal Kamban, 500th broadcast. And same thing I said in promoting it. That's still, so what? Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Context of White Supremacy signing out. We will be back tomorrow, white people permitting. Thanks for tuning in.